Alright, here we go, boys and girls, back with another Q&A. Starting off with Blood Dragon, and he says, or he asks, I should say, do you think Red Hood or any of the DLC characters will return in Injustice 3? That is the other side to that coin, right? We're really happy with the Injustice 2 DLC roster, but if history is any indication, it means these characters aren't going to be showing up in a future game. None of the Injustice 1 DLC characters showed up in Injustice 2, which is a bit of a shame because some of those Injustice 1 DLC characters were amazing. People like Martian Manhunter, Lobo, Batgirl. These characters didn't make it to Injustice 2. Does that mean in Injustice 3 we're not going to see Red Hood or Starfire or Black Manta or any of these fan favorite characters? And sadly, I think the answer is yes. I think it's pretty likely we won't see those characters on the main roster because you would need to come up with a story reason for each of them showing up. I think what's more likely is that they take a break from the series, from Injustice, which is a bit of a shame, and then maybe we get to bring in some of the DLC characters from Injustice 1. Characters like Lobo, characters like Martian Manhunter, characters like Batgirl. And I know there's going to be a few of you out there who think, well, it's not possible. Martian Manhunter died in the comics. First of all, there was never any confirmation that that means he's dead, although I'm just going to assume that means he's dead. But second of all, the character being dead doesn't really matter, especially if it happened in the comic books, because I mean, we saw characters like Victor Zsasz in the Injustice 2 story mode, even though he was dead in the Injustice 1 comic. Regardless, I am quite excited to see what they do with Injustice 3, and I certainly hope they find a way to incorporate characters like Red Hood into the story, because Red Hood was such a well-received character, and you've got the rest of the Injustice 2 DLC roster, which was so good. Like I said, if I had to predict, I would say no, none of the DLC characters are going to return to Injustice 3, but I'm certainly hoping that they do because so many of them were so well designed and so well received. Do you think Goku has a chance to appear in Smash 5? Well, there's actually some connection there, right? You've got Xenoverse 2, which has appeared on the Nintendo Switch platform, but no, I don't think Goku has a realistic chance of showing up in Smash 5. But then again, Nintendo's the type of company to do this thing. If you asked me, however many years ago, if Bayonetta was going to show up in Smash, I would say no. I would have said the same thing about Sonic. I would have said the same thing about all of these characters who have all of a sudden become pretty iconic to the Smash franchise. So at the end of the day, it's going to be up to Nintendo and also up to Bandai, but I would imagine Bandai would just instantly say yes. I'm going to have to wait and see. What outside guest characters would you like to see in BlazBlue Cross Tag Battle that would fit in with the rest of the roster? There is a couple different directions you could take this particular question. So for example, what counts as a guest character? Does a Ruby character count as a guest character? I would say not, because Ruby's a part of the main roster. However, does a Guilty Gear character count as a guest character? Because Guilty Gear is owned by Arc System, but it's not included on BlazBlue Cross Tag Battle. So I'm just going to assume that I'm allowed to use Guilty Gear characters here and just say, insert your favorite Guilty Gear character. Guilty Gear has such an interesting artistic style, and it's going to be some time before I get the chance to play a Guilty Gear, because I'm not going to go back and play an old one that people have already learned, because that sounds like a really easy way to get destroyed in every online match. But as a DLC guest character that could be released sometime in the future, seeing a Guilty Gear character show up on that roster would be something that would make me pretty happy, because it would allow me to experience these characters before getting to play a Guilty Gear game. If you were to bring over a Guilty Gear character, I feel like you would have to go with somebody like Soul Bad Guy, just because of what he is. Do you intend on making Rising Thunder content? You mentioned it, and it probably won't get many views, but it's still not dead, and the community would appreciate an intention injection. Unfortunately, Rising Thunder is the definition of a dead game. There's still a community there, and that's not to say I would never make content on a dead game. It's just it's a dead game for me as well. I haven't touched Rising Thunder in a long time, and the reason for that is it's hard to get excited about a game that has no further development or no further plans. For people unfamiliar with the history of Rising Thunder, it used to be an indie game that was being developed quite well. It was going to be the first ever competitive fighting game without motion inputs. It was going to have one-button abilities, and I was really excited about that because I think that's the direction fighting games should go in. And it seemed like Rising Thunder was going to do everything I ever wanted until Riot Games, the people who make League of Legends, decided to buy out the company that was working on Rising Thunder. Most people are assuming that this means Riot is going to announce a fighting game sometime in the future with a lot of similarities to Rising Thunder. That is a game that I'd be willing to make content on because it's a game I'm going to be very passionate about, especially assuming it has single one-button abilities. But as far as creating content for Rising Thunder, I honestly just don't care enough about that game because it's not going to get get any further development, but I certainly appreciate that there's still a massive community who loves that game. I'm in the Rising Thunder Discord. There's some great people in that community, and I'm glad that they're still passionate about the game, and I'm sure we're all sitting here waiting for Riot to announce the inevitable Riot fighting game. What's your favorite starter Pokemon? I like this question because it was just pretty random. He mentions that his is Squirtle, but I'm sorry, there is actually just no better starter Pokemon than Charmander. For anybody who knows anything about Pokemon, they know that Charmander is actually objectively the worst starter you can pick in the games that he shows up in. So Pokemon Blue, Pokemon Red, Pokemon Fire Red. He's actually the worst because going into the first and I believe even the second gym, he's at a disadvantage. But regardless, Charizard is one of my favorite Pokemon, so of course, I have to sit through the awfulness which is the Pokemon early levels with Charmander. What is your ideal combat pack? Mine is Spawn, Terminator, and Robocop. Oh, and the yellow guy from Sin City. For Mortal Kombat, my ideal combat pack would probably be Spawn, Pennywise, and Baraka. I like Baraka a lot, and I doubt he's going to show up on the main roster, so hopefully DLC, fingers crossed. Why don't you make online videos for Injustice 2? The main reason for it is that the community is kinda dead here in Australia. It's really difficult for me to find games in any fighting game, to be honest, as an Australian, because if I try to play with anybody from outside of Australia, then there's gonna be lag, of course. And the people who are here in Australia aren't really playing a whole lot of Injustice 2, and the people who are very, very passionate about it. I'm talking about the people who are still left here in Injustice 2 playing the game actively on rank. Most of them are either significantly worse than me or significantly better than me. Like I'm talking like pro level player. So I'm in like a really, really awkward spot where I'm an actual average player and the only people who are left here in Australia are people who are going to destroy me or people who stand no chance against me. There's no average players left. There's only really, really good players and really, really bad players. So I just don't feel like that makes for very entertaining content. So I've decided to stray away from the Injustice 2 online videos. And even if I had access to an actual online playlist that I could play with more people, even if I could play with like all the Americans and everything and it worked perfectly, I'm not sure I would continue to make Injustice 2 online content because I don't find the online content to be very enjoyable to watch for me personally, so I wouldn't subject my audience to something that I wouldn't watch, or at least I try not to. Are you going to do a Let's Play for Spider-Man PS4 and what edition are you getting? I'm not sure what edition I'm going to be getting. I know for a fact that I'm of course going to play the game and I'm of course going to have some videos on it regardless of whether I do an actual Let's Play or not. I'll probably try to do a Let's Play. We'll see how it goes. I'll try to figure it out as we go. But regardless of what edition I get, whenever DLC or whatever comes out, I'm of course going to get it. My dream character as DLC in any NRS game would be Talion from Shadow of War. Do you think he could work? He has his own grabs in games and his super could be the Elven Rage. Of course, Talion would be a great pick for actually either Mortal Kombat or Injustice. You can take him in two different directions. You can have him be a more gritty character and have him work in the Mortal Kombat world, or you can have him be a little more grounded and work in the Injustice world. It's just up to NetherRealm and whether they want to do it. It's also up to Warner Brothers and whether they want to do it. And honestly, I'm a bit disappointed they didn't do it this time around with Injustice 2 because Shadow of War happened to launch around about the same time as Injustice 2. It wasn't far after the launch of Injustice 2 that Shadow of War launched, and it would have made perfect sense to have Talion be a DLC character, but I guess we're gonna have to wait until maybe Injustice 3 or Mortal Kombat 11, and there's even a chance that we may never see Talion on a NetherRealm roster, but I've got my fingers crossed because I think he could work quite well, and it would give me a chance to experience the character because I'm probably never going to play through Shadow of War or Shadow of Mordor. I know Sarah Lance, the White Canary, is only a CW character, but if at all possible, would you like to see her in Injustice 3 as a playable character? Well, I would certainly like to see Black Canary as a playable character. I really liked her playstyle in Injustice 2. In fact, one of the only reasons I dropped her as a character is because I was having so much fun with Batman at the start of the game. I would assume that the gear system is at least going to return in Injustice 3, if not also in Mortal Kombat 11, and if it does, I see no reason to not bring the Premier Skin system with it, or just a skin system with it, and White Canary could pretty easily be a Premier Skin or a regular skin for Black Canary. I would love to see them bring in the actor who plays Sarah Lance, whose name I'm forgetting right now. I think it's Katie Lotz. Is that it? I'm gonna be so happy if I got that right. Let's Google it right now. Katie Lotz. Oh my god, I'm a genius. Yeah, it's Katie Lotz. She plays the character perfectly, and I would love to see her voice the character in Injustice 3 or any future game at all, really. For people who don't know, she's actually playable right now on the mobile version of the game, if that's something you're interested in. Would you like to see Spawn in MK11 or Injustice 3? And I realize I read that comment backwards. Don't worry, that was just my dyslexia kicking in. If I had to choose one, I'd probably go with Mortal Kombat 11, but in all honesty, I don't really have a preference. I don't care which game he shows up in, I just want him to show up in a game, and the only reason I slightly slightly lean towards Mortal Kombat 11 is that it comes out sooner than Injustice 3. So that's the way I'm looking at it. Do you think Fortnite might get representation in Smash? That would be awesome. Unfortunately though, you run into a lot of problems. Why would Nintendo want a Fortnite character in Smash? Fortnite is not currently on the Nintendo Switch platform, and if it was, it would be the first free-to-play game on the eShop, I think, so that would be a bit weird. But on top of that, what would you even do with a Fortnite character as a Smash representative? How much capability do you give him? So one of the big perks to Fortnite is that you're able to build buildings and work around that, and that's like a big part of your game plan. You want to build up buildings, and that's how you kind of avoid combat with your opponent until you have the upper hand, and then you try to fight him. But how do you work that into the type of game that Smash is? And what weapons do you give him? It all gets quite complicated, and it would require a lot of thought to come up with a valid moveset for a Fortnite character in Smash, but I do think there is something there, and something that would be very entertaining to see if Nintendo could pull off. But unfortunately, we're never going to see this happen until Fortnite is on the Nintendo Switch, and even still, it would be an extra stretch to see if it showed up in Smash. That being said, if Fortnite did show up on the Nintendo Switch, I would assume that we would get a Smash representative. Maybe not in Smash 5, but in a future Smash game. It would just depend on how soon Fortnite ends up showing up on the Switch. When will you do a face reveal? Soon, TM. That's it for today's questions. Hopefully you guys managed to enjoy the Q&A. If you did, leave a like on the video. It helps other people find it, which is always great because I love interacting with more and more people, especially here in the Q&A series. This entire series is literally just here to be able to interact with you guys. It used to be the case that this series did really well for my channel. I used to get a ton of views, but the problem is there's less news-related stuff going on with Injustice 2, so people aren't so excited to hear about speculative premiere skins and stuff like that because they know there's no more premiere skins coming to the game. So now that this series is actually one of my more lower viewed series, I still like doing it because it allows me to interact with you guys. Once again, thank you so much for watching. My name has been Bilbsy, and I'll see you in tomorrow's video.